Okay, welcome back to The Explainer. Let's get right into it because today we are exploring a really fascinating concept, digital sovereignty. Now, for decades, we've kind of just treated big tech not just as software, but literally as an unavoidable tax on modern society. We've been told over and over that massive institutions, governments, critical digital infrastructure, they absolutely require companies like Microsoft just to keep the lights on. But what if they don't? Recently, one of the world's most powerful nations pulled off what I can only describe as the ultimate heist. They took back their public infrastructure and proved that this absolute dependency we've all accepted, it's a complete lie.
Okay, let's dive into this. When a massive, absolutely critical pillar of law enforcement, like the French gendarmerie, executes a total corporate eviction of Microsoft, you have to realize this is not just some simple budget adjustment. No, this is a hardcore security mandate. They literally ripped Windows out of their national police force entirely. We're talking no licenses, no reliance on Silicon Valley whatsoever. And this bold maneuver, it totally exposed a massive, glaring structural weakness in the big tech monopoly. It's a weakness that honestly, no one really saw coming, but you can bet every other nation is watching closely now.
So how did they pull this off? We're going to break this geopolitical shift down into four key pillars: the illusion and the breach, the blueprint for escape, the 40% guillotine, and finally, the sovereign tech contagion. Let's jump in. Starting off with Pillar 1, the illusion and the breach, or the silent data hemorrhage. You see, the initial catalyst for this totally unprecedented shift wasn't just some sudden desire to save a few euros. It was actually driven by a live intelligence breach happening right in the background of everyday operations. We're talking about telemetry. Modern operating systems have telemetry baked deep inside them, constantly collecting diagnostics, app usage, all that stuff, and piping it directly back to corporate servers. Now, for you or me, a regular consumer, that's just background noise, right? But for a highly sensitive organization like a national police force, it's an active, pulsating threat. Think about the metadata for a second. If external servers are tracking login times, location pings, and operational frequency across tens of thousands of police computers, they can essentially piece together police raid schedules and investigative priorities. You are literally handing a foreign entity a real-time, constantly updating map of how a G7 nation defends itself. Absolutely wild. And this brilliantly illustrates the unavoidable geopolitical clash at play here. You have strict European data protection laws, and they fundamentally collide with the U.S. Cloud Act of 2018. Basically, the Cloud Act turned every piece of American technology into a potential surveillance liability for foreign governments. It gives U.S. authorities the legal mechanism to force U.S.-based cloud providers to just hand over data on demand. So it simply does not matter if the physical server is locked in a vault in Paris. American law quietly overrides French sovereignty. For French intelligence, relying on foreign tech basically became the equivalent of outsourcing their own national security. They desperately needed an escape hatch, and fast.
Which brings us to Pillar 2, the blueprint for escape and scaling this open-source rebellion.
Look, you don't plug a data leak of that magnitude by just complaining about it. You execute a structural exit. 103,000. Let that number sink in. That is the sheer scale of this rebellion. Today, 97% of the French gendarmerie's entire desktop fleet runs on a custom, internally built Linux operating system. And this attacks the so-called OEM tax head-on. Normally, every time a government buys a computer, they pay an unavoidable toll to Microsoft. But when a new computer arrives for the French police now, it is completely bare. There is no automatic activation handshake reaching out to Redmond. Zero Microsoft tax attached to 103,000 machines. It is just pure, unadulterated digital independence.
And this strategy is actively crossing borders. Over in Germany, the state of Schleswig-Holstein is executing the exact same blueprint for its 30,000 government computers. They're ripping out Microsoft and deploying open-source tools like LibreOffice and Nextcloud. And look at their methodology here. They aren't just treating this like some reckless weekend IT experiment. No, they are rolling it out in meticulous, highly calculated waves. They start with admin workstations, scale up to regional departments, and finally tackle those really complex municipal systems. And they use strict 90-day stabilization periods between each phase. That right there is the ultimate proof. This is a bulletproof strategy designed to permanently replace foreign tech infrastructure.
Moving on to Pillar 3, the 40% guillotine and hardware rescue. Let's talk about the true cost of forced obsolescence.
Because here's the thing, when you abandon big tech, you don't just get a new desktop background. You fundamentally rewire your national economy. France achieved a staggering 40% drop in total cost of ownership. They literally severed $2.2 million from their licensing budget every single year. But the true economic analysis here goes so much deeper than just those surface-level savings. By actually owning their operating system, they transform software from a rented, never-ending liability into an owned public asset. Every single dollar that used to automatically drain into a corporate profit column in the US now stays securely within French borders.
And then we have to talk about the massive, heavily disguised cost of forced obsolescence. Arbitrary hardware cutoffs, like Microsoft requiring a specific TPM 2.0 chip just for a Windows 11 upgrade, are essentially a manufactured crisis. I mean, imagine a car manufacturer forcing you to buy a brand new vehicle just because they updated the software on the radio. It's completely absurd, but that's exactly what happens in government IT. Perfectly capable laptops fail this arbitrary check, they get blocked from upgrading, and they're sent straight to the landfill. It turns what should be a simple software refresh into a forced multi-million-dollar budget event and creates thousands of tons of e-waste.
So the crucial point is really obvious when you lay it out like this. The Microsoft cycle totally operates on extraction. It forces rigid 5 to 7 year hardware replacements, generates all that premature e-waste, and constantly funnels capital overseas. But the sovereign cycle? It reclaims agency over public infrastructure. Without those arbitrary hardware cutoffs, the life of existing equipment is vastly extended. E-waste naturally plummets. And most importantly, millions in capital are retained right there in the public budget. That money is redirected away from licensing fees and poured straight into actual field operations, public staffing, and local training.
And honestly, the economic math scales so aggressively. Back in Germany, Schleswig-Holstein allocated roughly 30 million euros for their multi-year transition. And the payoff? They are locking in a recurring savings of 16.5 million euros annually. An ROI of under 2 years for a massive statewide IT overhaul is practically unheard of. It completely shatters that whole myth of insurmountable switching costs that big tech loves to propagate. Those switching costs, they're just a scare tactic. The reality is an immediate, permanent boost to the local state budget.
Okay, our final pillar, the sovereign tech contagion. Let's look at this shift in global power dynamics. Picture a tense corporate boardroom. A tech monopoly relies almost entirely on the customer believing they have absolutely nowhere else to go. But when a French ministry or a German state sits down across from a software rep today, that vendor can no longer dictate the terms. The government officials arrive armed with hard internal data proving they can run their entire operation completely smoothly on open source. They aren't sitting there begging for a minor discount, they are literally holding the map to the exit door. The pricing power instantly flips. France and Germany just handed every other nation the exact blueprint to strip big tech of its ultimate leverage.
And this leads to the ultimate economic victory. The money pulled out of big tech is triggering an absolute renaissance for the local European software sector. When millions of euros are kept inside European borders, they flow directly into domestic open-source foundations. Local developers are suddenly getting those massive government contracts that used to just default to Silicon Valley. European office software companies and EU cloud providers are securing lucrative long-term deals, essentially building a sovereign tech stack that can actually compete on the global stage. And this contagion? It is highly infectious. Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands are actively watching this exact blueprint, realizing, hey, we can reclaim our tech infrastructure too.
Now, let's bring this all right down to your desk, because the exact same blueprint that liberated a G7 nation and is actively revitalizing a massive local economy, it scales perfectly to your personal laptop. You don't need a massive IT budget to take back control. The open source tools driving this sovereign revolution are freely available for you to install in a single afternoon. That same telemetry resistance that protects French intelligence from surveillance, it can easily protect your household's privacy right now. And bypassing forced hardware obsolescence literally saves you the outright cost of buying a brand new computer when your current one works perfectly fine.
We are standing on the absolute edge of a completely altered digital landscape. The era of the unavoidable software monopoly is actively fracturing right in front of us. The roadmap to independence is out there. It's fully proven, it's running at a massive scale, it's revitalizing local tech industries, and it's keeping massive public budgets right where they belong. Which leaves us with one powerful, really provocative thought regarding the digital borders of our own lives. If a nuclear-armed G7 nation doesn't need them, do you?